They say Earth has only ever had one Goku. They're wrong. Somewhere past the edge of a battle no one alive remembers, a warrior who has already worn every transformation his body will ever hold, who has already buried friends this timeline hasn't even met yet, gets torn backward through the fabric King Kai's own realm was never meant to bend. He falls from a sky that shouldn't exist yet, into a world where his own legend hasn't been written, and the first face he sees is his. Raditz is still coming. The invasion hasn't started, and now there are two Sons of Bardock standing under the same sun, one who's still learning what he is, and one who's already seen how far it can go. This is Multiverse Saiyan. If your brain just did a double take, good, so did mine writing it. That's the whole game on this channel. Jonathan Billy takes the wildest what-if you can throw at Dragon Ball Z and actually plays it out. No shortcuts, no nerfing. Got a crossover you're dying to see collide with Season 1? Drop it in the comments. This is exactly how these get picked. Hit subscribe, smash that like, ring the bell, because Earth just stopped having only one protector, and you do not want to miss what happens next. The lookout sat above the world the way it always had, a white stone platform floating past the clouds, close enough to heaven that Cammy sometimes forgot the difference. Mr. Popo was watering the sacred trees near the eastern edge when the sky tore. It did not happen the way storms happened, or the way ki blasts happened, or the way anything Cammy had felt in 300 years of watching over the earth happened. There was no build, no warning tremor along the threads of awareness he kept stretched across the planet like a spider feeling its web. One moment the afternoon was ordinary, the year's grace period ticking down toward whatever the future held. Young Goku off training somewhere with his son on his back, the world blissfully unaware of the storm gathering in the stars above it. The next moment, something cracked. Not the sky, not the clouds. Something underneath the sky, the way ice cracks under weight nobody can see. Cammy's staff clattered against the tile as he rose from his meditation, and for the first time in longer than Popo could remember, the old Namekian's face showed something close to fear. "Popo," he said, "do you feel that?" Mr. Popo set down his watering can slowly, dark eyes narrowing toward the horizon, not toward any single direction, but toward all of them at once, the way a compass needle trembles before it finds north. "I feel two of something," he said, "where there is supposed to be one." They both knew what that meant before either said the name. Far below, in the scrubland northeast of Mount Paozu, where the grass grew brittle and the wind carried the mineral smell of exposed rock, the world tore a second time, and this time it was visible. The rip opened without ceremony, a seam of white-blue light stitched into the air 8 feet above the ground, widening, buckling, spitting sparks of temporal static that scorched small black circles into the dirt below. There was no thunderclap, no roar. Only a low, deep hum, like the world itself groaning under a weight it was never built to carry. And then a shape fell through, hit the ground hard enough to throw a crater of dust and shattered stone 20 feet wide, and did not move. For a long moment, nothing did. Then the dust settled and revealed a man. He knelt in the crater's center on one knee, one fist planted against the earth, breathing hard, not from the fall, but from something deeper, something that had been asking everything of his body for far longer than the fall itself had lasted. His gi was orange, unmistakably orange, the same cut and color the world would come to know as legend, but it was torn at the shoulder, scorched black along one hem, patched in 3 places with cloth that didn't match. His hair, wild and dark, hung longer than convention allowed, framing a face that had the bones of a boy's face and the eyes of someone who had stopped being a boy a long, long time ago. A thin white scar traced from his collarbone up toward his throat. His forearms bore the kind of scarring that didn't come from training, the kind that came from moments where losing meant something worse than losing a spar. He lifted his head, looked at his own hands, flexing the fingers as if checking they still belonged to him. Looked at the sky. Sky, wrong light, wrong feel to the air itself, thinner and stranger and younger somehow, though he couldn't have said how he knew that. And then he felt it, the unmistakable, impossible thing his senses had been screaming since the moment he'd hit the ground. Another power, achingly familiar, radiating from somewhere not far to the west. A power that felt like looking in a mirror. He rose to his feet, dust falling from his shoulders, and allowed himself, for just a moment, something between a laugh and a groan. "Of course," he muttered, to no one, "of course it sent me here." Young Goku felt it too, a spike of power so sudden and so strange that he nearly dropped Gohan mid-swing on the training branch he'd rigged up outside the house. 4-year-old Gohan yelped and clung tighter to his father's back as Goku's whole body went rigid, eyes fixed on the horizon to the east. "Dad? What is it?" "I don't know." Goku set Gohan down carefully despite the urgency crawling up his spine, crouching to his son's eye level. "Stay here with your mom. I mean it. Gohan, inside, doors locked. Don't come out no matter what you hear." "But, Gohan." It wasn't a tone Goku used often. Gohan's mouth snapped shut, and he nodded, small and scared, and ran for the house. Chi-Chi met her son at the door with a frying pan already half raised out of instinct, took one look at Goku's face, and didn't argue. She'd learned over the years which of Goku's expressions meant training accident and which meant something is wrong with the world. This was the second kind. Goku was in the air before the door shut behind them, streaking east, every sense he had stretched toward that impossible, familiar, strange signature. It didn't feel like Piccolo. It didn't feel like a Saiyan, though something about its shape, its texture, made the hair on his arms stand on end in a way that reminded him uncomfortably of the one time he'd sparred hard enough with Piccolo to taste his own blood. It felt controlled, massive. And underneath the strangeness of it, it felt like, no, that was impossible. He pushed faster. Piccolo felt it from his cliffside perch above a river gorge 300 miles south, and his eyes opened before the thought fully finished forming. That's not a power level. That's 2 power levels standing in the same skin. He was in motion within seconds, cape snapping behind him, jaw set. Whatever this was, it had appeared without warning close to the boy, close to Goku, and Piccolo had learned enough about warning signs over the past year to know that unexplained and close to Earth's strongest fighter was not a combination that ended well. The stranger in the crater was still getting his bearings, testing his footing on ground that felt subtly different beneath him. The gravity a half-step lighter than he expected, the air a half-step thinner. When the first arrival came down from the sky like a comet, with a face he already knew better than his own reflection. Young Goku landed hard, power pole already off his back, eyes wide and locked on the man across the crater. For 3 full seconds, neither of them said a word. The wind moved between them, kicking up dust, and somewhere in the distance a hawk cried out over the scrubland as if even the wildlife understood something had gone deeply wrong with the order of things. It was present Goku who broke first, because it was always present Goku who broke first. Curiosity winning out over caution the way it always had, the way it always would. "You look like me," he said, disbelief warring with wonder in his voice. A lot like me." "Are you?" His grip tightened on the power pole without him quite deciding to. "Who are you?" The older man's mouth pulled into something that wasn't quite a smile, something sadder than that, and warmer, and older. He straightened out of his crouch fully now, rolling one shoulder to test it, wincing slightly at whatever ached there. "That's a longer answer than you'd believe right now," he said. His voice was the same voice, deeper, rougher at the edges, carrying the particular exhaustion of someone who has said far too many hard things far too many times, but it was unmistakably bone deep, the same voice. "Short version, I'm you. Later. Later than you'd guess." Present Goku's jaw actually dropped. "No way. I know how it sounds. How does that even—" He circled half a step, studying the older man's face with the frank, open curiosity of someone who had never learned to hide what he was thinking. "Your hair's all messed up, and you've got scars. I don't have scars there." He pointed at his own collarbone, then, a beat later, seemed to catch up to the actual weight of what he was looking at. His voice dropped. "Wait, if you're me, from later, what happens? Are we okay? Is everyone okay?" Something crossed Future Goku's face then, quick, controlled, but not quite quick enough to hide entirely. A flicker of old grief, filed down by time into something manageable, but never fully gone. "Some of it," he said carefully. "Not all of it. That's not something I get to just hand you, kid." "Trust me on that. I'm not a kid, I'm present." Goku stopped himself, some new instinct telling him that arguing his own age with his own future self was a losing proposition on multiple levels, and instead planted his feet, more serious now. "Okay, fine. So what happened? Why are you here? What threw you back?" Future Goku's gaze drifted briefly toward the horizon, toward a battle that existed nowhere on this timeline, fought against an enemy this young man across from him had never heard of and, if the timelines held true even slightly different from here, might never have to. His hand curled into a loose fist at his side. "A technique," he said finally. "One of mine, one of ours eventually, went wrong at the worst possible moment, mid-fight, and instead of doing what it was supposed to do, it tore something open that shouldn't tear. I don't fully understand the mechanics. I just know I fell, and I kept falling, and then I was here." He looked around at the scrubland, at the too familiar shape of Mount Paozu on the horizon, and something like realization dawned slow and heavy across his face. Here being before Raditz. Present Goku's stomach dropped. "You know about Raditz?" "I know about Raditz," Future Goku said grimly. "I know about a lot of things you don't yet. And I'm telling you right now, kid, that's going to be a problem, one way or another, because I am not built to stand here and watch history happen to you when I already know how some of it goes." The air between them had gone taut, charged, the earlier wonder curdling into something more complicated. It was Piccolo's voice, cutting across the crater from where he'd landed silently on a nearby ridge, that broke the moment entirely. "Which means," Piccolo said, low and dangerous, dropping down into the crater with his arms crossed and his eyes fixed hard on the stranger, You're either the most useful thing that's ever fallen out of the sky onto this planet, or the single greatest threat we've ever faced. And I intend to find out which before you take one more step." Future Goku turned to face him, and for the first time since he'd hit the ground, something in his exhausted posture straightened, not with hostility, but with the unmistakable bone-deep recognition of an old ally seen through years he hadn't lived yet. "Piccolo," he said, and there was real warmth in it, startling even himself. "You have no idea how good it is to see your ugly green face again." Piccolo's eye twitched. "I don't know you." "No," Future Goku agreed. Quiet now, almost gentle. "Not yet, but you will. And when you do, you're going to matter more to me than almost anyone else alive." He let that sit, watching the Namekian's guarded expression flicker with something like unwilling curiosity, before continuing, more careful now. "I'm not your enemy. I know that's exactly what an enemy would say. I don't have a way to prove it fast. But Raditz is coming, and whatever version of that fight you're bracing for, I promise you, it just changed. For better or worse, I don't know yet. That's the truth, and it's the only one I've got." High above, unseen, Cammy watched the crater through eyes that had learned centuries ago never to trust a miracle without questioning its cost, and reached for his staff, murmuring low to Mr. Popo beside him. "Two sons of Bardock under one sky," the old Namekian said softly, watching the distant flare of two nearly identical energies twist and coil against each other on the horizon. "The universe does not make mistakes this large by accident, Popo. Something is going to break because of this. I only pray we're strong enough to be the ones who decide what." Below them, the wind kept blowing dust across the crater's broken earth, and history, real, present tense, unwritten history, held its breath to see which way it would bend. Piccolo did not lower his guard, but he did lower his fists, a small mercy, and one that Future Goku recognized for exactly what it was. "Talk," Piccolo said, "fast. And it had better be good, because right now all I have is a stranger wearing my ally's face, claiming to know things he shouldn't, standing 300 miles from where the actual invasion is supposed to start." "Fair." Future Goku held his hands loosely open, unthreatening, the universal posture of a man who'd learned the hard way that the wrong gesture at the wrong moment could turn a conversation into a fight nobody wanted. "Ask what you need to ask. I'll tell you what I can." It was present Goku who spoke first, though. Quieter now, some of the earlier wonder replaced by something heavier. "How much later are you from? Like, how old am I? You, however that works." "Old enough," Future Goku said, "that answering that honestly opens a door I'm not sure either of us wants opened yet. Let's just say I've had time most people don't get. Time to fight things this planet hasn't imagined yet. Time to lose people." His jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "Time to get strong enough that the version of me standing in front of you right now could probably level this entire gorge without trying very hard." Piccolo's eyes narrowed further. "That's not an answer. That's a threat with better manners." "It's not a threat." Future Goku met his gaze steadily. "It's a fact, and I think you'd rather I hand you facts than comfortable lies. I could pretend to be weaker than I am to make you feel better about this conversation. I'm not going to, because if Raditz's scouter gets anywhere near me, it's not going to matter what I say my power level is." That landed. Piccolo's arms, still crossed, tightened fractionally, not in aggression this time, but in calculation. He had spent a year privately, bitterly aware of exactly how outmatched Earth's strongest currently stood against whatever was coming from beyond the sky. The idea of a wild card this large entering the equation was, depending on its allegiance, either the best thing that had ever happened to this planet or the deciding factor in its destruction. "You said you know what's coming," Piccolo said slowly. "You said the fight already changed because you're here. Explain that." Future Goku exhaled, long and slow, the exhaustion of the fall and of everything before it, settling visibly across his shoulders. "In the timeline I came from, there's a version of events that happens here. Soon. I'm not going to hand you every detail, 'cause some of what makes people who they are, some of what makes him," he nodded toward his younger self, "who he becomes, happens because of things I'd be robbing him of by spelling it all out. That's not me being cagey for the sake of it. That's me having learned the hard way that changing the wrong thing at the wrong moment can cost you people you can't get back." "That's convenient," Piccolo said flatly. "It's earned," Future Goku shot back, sharper than he meant to, and for just a moment something raw showed through the composed exterior. Old grief, old fury, banked but not extinguished. He caught himself, exhaled again, softer. "Sorry, it's a sore subject. I'll give you what I safely can. Someone's coming. Soon. Days, maybe less. He's family. He's not friendly. And what happens in that fight sets the shape of everything after it. For years." Present Goku's head snapped up. "Family? What do you mean family? Dad's dead. My grandpa's dead. Not that kind of family," Future Goku said, and something in his tone made both Piccolo and his younger self go very still. "The kind neither of us has met yet. The kind that's going to walk up to you and use a name you've never heard before like it means something and tell you things about where you actually come from that are going to turn your whole world sideways in about 30 seconds. The silence that followed was total. Even the wind seemed to hold itself. "What name?" Present Goku asked, very quietly. Future Goku hesitated. A long, visible hesitation, weighing the cost of every possible answer, and then shook his head. "I'm not going to be the one who tells you that. It has to happen the way it happens. I'm sorry. That's not me being cruel. That's me protecting something I don't fully understand the shape of yet. How much I can bend before it breaks something worse than what I'm trying to prevent." Piccolo studied him for a long moment, weighing the answer, weighing the restraint in it, because a liar, Piccolo thought, would have simply invented a name to sound convincing. A man protecting something real held his tongue exactly like this. "You're serious," Piccolo said slowly. "You actually believe changing what you say could break something." "I don't believe it. I know it." Future Goku's voice carried a weight that hadn't been there a moment ago. "I've watched what happens when someone gets handed too much of their own future. It doesn't make them stronger. It makes them hesitate at exactly the moment they can't afford to." His eyes flicked, briefly, protectively, toward his younger self. "I'm not doing that to him." They found Krillin roughly an hour later, or rather Krillin found them, arriving at a dead sprint across the scrubland with his face white and his voice cracking. "Goku, I felt two of you. What is—" He skidded to a stop at the crater's edge, eyes going comically wide as they landed on Future Goku, then flicking rapid fire between the two nearly identical faces. Okay, that's not possible, right?" Someone tell me that's not possible. It's possible, present Goku said, and there was something new in his voice now. Not quite fear, but the sober weight of a 15-year-old boy realizing the ground beneath his whole life had just shifted. He's me, from later. Krillin's mouth opened and closed twice before anything came out. Later. How much later? Because no offense, buddy, but you look like you got hit by a truck. Several trucks. A truck convention. Despite everything, Future Goku laughed. A real laugh, startled out of him, warm and sudden and entirely unguarded. And for just a moment the exhausted weight lifted from his face and he looked, briefly, like the boy across the crater from him. "Krillin," he said, shaking his head. "I forgot how much I missed that mouth of yours. You know me?" "I know all of you." Future Goku's voice softened, and something in it made even Piccolo's guarded posture ease a fraction. "Better than almost anyone. That's not going to change, whatever else does." Krillin looked between the two Gokus, then at Piccolo, then back again, visibly trying to process the sheer scale of what he was looking at. "Okay, well, not that I'm not thrilled about the whole double Goku situation, but is anyone going to explain why this feels like the setup to something really, really bad? Because it might be," Piccolo said grimly, "or it might be the only reason this planet survives what's coming. We don't know yet." That's the problem. It took the better part of the afternoon for the full group to gather. Krillin's arrival drawing Yamcha and Tien and Chiaotzu in from their own scattered corners of training, all of them converging on the crater with expressions ranging from disbelief to open alarm. Bulma, alerted by Krillin's frantic phone call, arrived by capsule aircraft not long after, immediately whipping out a scanning device and aiming it at Future Goku with the fearless curiosity of someone who had long since stopped being surprised by anything involving her friends. "Okay, this reading is insane," she muttered, staring at the device's display, then up at Future Goku, then back down. "This can't be right. Nobody's power level does this." "It's right," Future Goku said simply. Bulma's eyes narrowed, scientist suspicion cutting through the shock. "You're not exactly forthcoming, are you?" "It's right. Great. Super helpful. I know it's frustrating." Future Goku's expression was apologetic but firm. "I promise I'm not enjoying being the mystery in the room. There's just a lot I can't say without doing damage I don't fully understand yet." It was Piccolo, arms still crossed, who finally addressed the group as a whole, his voice cutting through the scattered chatter and disbelief. "Here's what we actually know. Something ripped a hole in the sky and dropped a version of Goku from, however far in the future, into the middle of our timeline. Days before an invasion he claims to already know the outcome of. He says he's not our enemy. He says giving us too many details could break something worse than what we're trying to prevent. And his power level, by every reading we have, is high enough that if he were our enemy, none of us in this clearing would currently be having this conversation." The group went quiet at that, the reality of it settling in. "So what do we do?" Yamcha asked, glancing sidelong at the stranger with poorly hidden unease. "Just trust him? Based on nothing?" "Not on nothing," present Goku said, surprising everyone by speaking up, his voice steadier than it had been all afternoon. "I looked at him. I felt him. That's not nothing, Yamcha. That's me. Further down a road I haven't walked yet. I don't know everything he knows, but I know what it feels like to be me, and that's what I'm feeling standing next to him. If I can't trust that, I don't know what I can trust." Future Goku looked at his younger self for a long moment, something complicated and grateful and faintly sad crossing his weathered face, and said nothing, because there was nothing that needed saying. It was Tien who finally broke the standoff, ever the pragmatist. "Cammy," he said, "if anyone on this planet can actually confirm what we're dealing with, it's him. He watches everything. Let's take this to the lookout before we decide anything permanent." The lookout received them in silence broken only by wind moving across white stone. Kami stood waiting at the platform's edge as though he had known the exact moment they would arrive, which, present Goku reflected, he probably had. The old Namekian studied future Goku for a long, unbroken minute, his ancient eyes moving over the scars, the weathered face, the steady, controlled hum of ki beneath the surface, in a way that made even the powerful fighters around him feel suddenly, uncomfortably transparent. "You are not lying about who you are," Cammy said finally. "That much I can confirm absolutely. The resonance between you and your younger self is unmistakable, a signature too precise to fake. What I cannot confirm is whether your presence here is a blessing or a catastrophe, and I suspect, from the weight I see you carrying, that you cannot fully confirm that either." "No," Future Goku admitted. "I can't. I've turned it over in my head since I fell. I don't know if I'm about to save this planet or unravel something that was never meant to be touched." "Then we are in agreement on the only honest assessment available to any of us." Kami's staff tapped once against the tile, thoughtful. "I will not pretend to you that your arrival is without danger, young man, or old man, as the case genuinely is. A power such as yours, existing in a timeline not built to hold it, creates ripples none of us can fully predict. But I have watched this world face annihilation more than once, and I have learned that refusing help out of fear of the unknown has never once saved it." He met Future Goku's eyes squarely. "So I will ask you plainly, rather than test you the long way as I might once have done, when the one you call family arrives, whose side do you stand on?" Future Goku didn't answer immediately. He looked out over the clouds below the lookout, at the small, distant, ordinary blue-green world he had fought half his life to protect, in a future none of these people could yet imagine, and something in his posture settled, quiet, certain, immovable. "Earths," he said. "Every time. That's never once been a question I had to think about twice. Not in my timeline, and not in this one either. I don't know everything that's coming. I don't know exactly how much I'm allowed to change before I break something I can't fix. But I know that. I'll stand between this planet and anything that comes for it, family or not, for as long as I'm able." Cammy held his gaze a moment longer, measuring, weighing, the ancient patience of centuries behind his eyes, and then, slowly, inclined his head. "Then perhaps," the old guardian said, "the universe did not make a mistake dropping you here after all. Perhaps it made a gift of very poor timing." His gaze swept the gathered group. Piccolo's guarded posture, present Goku's quiet resolve, Krillin's nervous energy, Bulma's calculating focus. "Whatever comes next, you will not face it as strangers to one another anymore. That, at least, is something." Far below, unseen by any of them, a Saiyan pod was already screaming down through Earth's atmosphere, its lone occupant scouter blinking steadily as it registered, and then registered again, and recalculated, certain it had made some manner of error, not one abnormally high power level on this insignificant mudball of a planet. 2. Raditz's pod cracked open in a field east of the mountains, hissing steam into cold morning air, and for a long moment the Saiyan simply sat inside it, unmoving, staring at the twin readings still blinking insistently across his scouter's display. It had to be malfunctioning. That was the only explanation that made sense. Two identical power signatures, both climbing steadily past thresholds that should have been impossible on a planet this backward, both radiating from roughly the same location, both carrying a genetic marker his scouter flagged, with cold mechanical certainty, as Bardock's line. He tapped the side of the device, hard, half expecting the reading to correct itself. It didn't. Raditz climbed out of the pod slowly, boots sinking into damp earth, and allowed himself, for the first time since leaving Vegeta and Nappa on the ship, something close to genuine unease. He had come expecting an easy retrieval, a low-class warrior gone soft on some backwater mudball, a brother to collect or eliminate depending on his usefulness, a planet to soften up for conquest in the process. He had not come expecting two readings that, individually, already sat higher than he'd anticipated, and together suggested something had gone deeply, inexplicably wrong with his understanding of the situation. He straightened his armor, adjusted the scouter, and set off toward the coordinates with his jaw tight and his tail lashing behind him, because whatever else was true, a Saiyan did not turn back from confusion. A Saiyan solved confusion with force and asked questions of whatever was left standing afterward. They felt him coming before they saw him, a hard, cold, unmistakably hostile power cutting toward Kamehouse's stretch of coastline like a blade drawn across still water. The whole group had relocated there overnight at Roshi's grumbling insistence, on the theory that if the world was about to end, it might as well end somewhere with a working refrigerator. Future Goku felt it first, and something in his face changed the instant he did. Old muscle memory, old grief, old fury all surfacing at once beneath a composure that held, but only barely. "That's him," he said quietly. "That's Raditz." Present Goku's stomach dropped. "You're sure?" "I'd know that signature anywhere." Future Goku's hands curled slowly into fists at his sides. "I've had a long time to make sure I'd never forget it." Piccolo caught the weight in that sentence immediately, the specific, bone-deep quality of a grudge carried across years, and filed it away without comment, because there wasn't time to unpack it now. "How do you want to handle this?" he asked instead, already dropping into a ready stance. "Because I assume, given everything, you have opinions." "I have more than opinions." Future Goku turned to face the group, all of them now, Krillin and Yamcha and Tien and Chiaotzu, Bulma hovering anxiously near the doorway with Gohan's small hand gripped tight in hers, having refused point blank to be sent somewhere safer while her son's fate hung in the balance. "In my timeline, this fight went a certain way. People got hurt who didn't have to. I'm not interested in watching that happen again if I can help it. But I need everyone to understand something first, because it matters more than it sounds like it should." "What?" Piccolo asked. "I need him to still get his moment," Future Goku said, meeting his younger self's eyes. "Not because I want anyone to get hurt, because some of what I become depends on choices made in the next hour. And if I just erase that by overwhelming everything myself, I don't know what I take away from him in the process. I've thought about this since I landed. I'm not going to sit on the sidelines and let people I love get hurt to protect some abstract idea of destiny." But I'm also not going to steamroll every choice he's about to have to make. There's a line, I mean to walk it as carefully as I can. Present Goku held his gaze steadily, something resolute settling into his young face. Then let me take the first stand, he said, the way I would have anyway. You back me up if it goes wrong. Not before. Future Goku studied him for a long moment, pride and fear and something achingly tender all warring in his expression, and nodded once, slow and deliberate. Deal. But the second it goes wrong, I'm not waiting for permission. Wouldn't expect you to. Raditz arrived at the coastline with his cape snapping in the sea wind and his scouter's readings scrolling in a way that made his patience fray further with every passing second. Because now, standing on the sand in front of him, was not one confusing power signature, but the physical, undeniable sight of two identical warriors, one weathered and scarred in ways that made no sense for this backward little planet, the other younger, exactly matching the profile he'd been sent to retrieve. Well, Raditz said slowly, scouter whirring as it struggled to reconcile what it was seeing. This is new. Raditz, present Goku stepped forward first, exactly as agreed, power pole gripped tight, jaw set with a courage that didn't fully mask the fear underneath it. Because whatever he didn't know yet, he understood clearly enough that this stranger had come across the stars specifically for him. Who are you? How do you know my name? Raditz's mouth curved into something cold and amused. Straight to it, then. Fine. Saves us both the tedious build-up. His tail flicked, Scouter locking onto the younger Goku with clinical precision. My name is Raditz, and you, little brother, are the reason I've crossed half the galaxy to stand on this miserable rock. Brother! The word hit present Goku like a physical blow, staggering him half a step. Behind him, he heard Bulma's sharp intake of breath, heard Krillin mutter something disbelieving under his breath, felt the whole weight of the assembled group go rigid with shock, all except Future Goku, whose face had gone carefully, deliberately still, the stillness of a man watching a wound he already knew was coming. Your real name, Raditz continued, savoring it, is Kakarot. You were sent to this planet as an infant, on a mission, a purge, the clearing of a world for conquest, a mission you have spectacularly, embarrassingly failed to complete, judging by the pathetic power level you were carrying before this second one showed up to complicate my day. His eyes flicked, sharp and calculating, toward Future Goku. Which brings me to you, because whatever you are not supposed to exist, and I find that I do not enjoy things I cannot explain. You don't need to explain me, Future Goku said quietly, stepping up beside his younger self but not in front of him, a deliberate choice, and Piccolo, watching close behind, understood exactly what it cost him to make it. You need to leave this planet. That's the only part of this conversation that actually matters. Raditz laughed, short, sharp, genuinely delighted. Oh, I like this. Truly. Two of the same worthless whelp, and both of you think you're in a position to give me orders. He straightened, tail curling. Here's how this actually works. Whichever of you is currently in charge of this delusion, you have a choice. Both of you, apparently, though frankly one is sufficient. Join me. Help me clear this planet the way a Saiyan is born to, and take your rightful place among true warriors instead of wasting your strength defending insects. Refuse, and I level every structure on this coastline before the hour's out, starting with the small ones. His gaze slid, deliberate and cruel, toward Gohan, still gripped tight in Bulma's arms. I understand family sentiment is a weakness this planet indulges. I find it useful, personally. The temperature of the moment changed instantly. Present Goku's whole body went taut, fury cutting cleanly through the shock of the past minute. Beside him, future Goku's ki flared, not released, not unleashed, but present now in a way it hadn't been a moment ago, a low, controlled hum of barely restrained power that made Raditz's scouter shriek in protest and made the Saiyan take, despite himself, one small involuntary step back. "You don't touch my son," present Goku said, low and dangerous, a tone none of his friends had ever heard from him before. Not now, not ever. "Your son," Raditz's amusement flickered, recalculating, scouter working overtime. How touching, and how convenient a lever to pull, apparently. "Last warning," future Goku said, and his voice had dropped into something colder, older, carrying the unmistakable weight of a man who had made this exact threat before and meant it every single time. "Leave. This isn't a fight you want. I promise you that." Raditz's gaze swept between them, the boy's fury, the elder's terrible stillness, and something in his Saiyan pride, the same pride that would one day define his entire bloodline's downfall and glory alike, refused to let the threat stand unanswered. "I don't take orders from insects," he said, and moved. The strike came fast. Faster than present Goku had ever traded blows with anything, a blur of motion aimed squarely at his ribs, and for one suspended half-second, everyone watching braced for the sound of bone breaking. It never came. Present Goku's power pole snapped up and caught the blow dead center, the impact throwing a shockwave of displaced sand and air outward across the beach, and though the force of it drove him back 3 full skidding steps, he held, planted, teeth gritted, staring down a brother he'd learned the name of less than a minute ago, with an expression that had nothing to do with fear anymore. "Nice," Raditz muttered, genuine surprise flickering across his face. "Better than I expected, still nowhere near enough. Maybe not by myself," present Goku said, breathing hard, boots dug into the sand. "Good thing I'm not by myself." Behind him, future Goku had not moved an inch, arms still loose at his sides, watching his younger self hold that first devastating exchange with an expression caught somewhere between unbearable pride and old, aching grief. Because he remembered this exact moment, this exact strike, from a version of events that had gone very differently the first time he'd lived it. And this time, watching it unfold with his own eyes instead of through the fog of memory, he found himself gripped by a fierce, protective certainty that whatever came next, whatever line he'd promised himself he'd walk carefully, he was not going to let this beach become the place where history repeated its worst mistake twice. "Kakarot," Raditz said, straightening from the block, Scouter recalculating rapidly as he registered the true weight behind that single parried strike. "I'll admit, you're stronger than the reports suggested. It changes nothing. Join me, or watch what happens when I stop holding back." His eyes cut, cold and pointed, toward the older figure standing silent a few feet away. "And you. I don't know what you are. I intend to find out, one way or another, before this day is finished." The wind off the ocean picked up, carrying salt and ozone and the electric tension of a fight about to fully ignite, and on the sand between them, 2 Sons of Bardock, one still becoming himself, one who had already paid every price that becoming would ever cost, stood their ground together against the first true test of everything that had changed. "You want to find out what I am," Future Goku said quietly, and for the first time since he'd fallen from a sky that didn't belong to him, something like the full weight of who he'd become pressed out into the air around him, vast and controlled and absolutely certain. "Fine. But my son fights his fight first. That's the deal. You so much as breathe wrong toward Gohan again, and you'll wish you'd never left your ship." Raditz's scouter let out a single, sharp, protesting whine, and then, for just a moment, the number on its display refused to stop climbing. The fight that followed did not resemble anything Raditz had planned for. He came in low and fast, a blur across the sand aimed at present Goku's exposed flank, the same opening gambit that had, in another version of this exact morning, ended with a Saiyan's tail wrapped around a Namekian's ankle and a father screaming his son's name into empty air. This time, present Goku met the strike head-on, power pole discarded now in favor of bare hands, trading blow for blow with a ferocity that startled even himself. He was faster than he'd been a week ago, angrier too, the word Kakarot still sitting in his chest like a stone, the threat against Gohan still burning hot behind his eyes, and that anger sharpened him in ways his usual easy cheerfulness never had. Raditz caught a strike to the jaw that snapped his head sideways, tasted blood, and laughed, delighted, genuinely, the way only a Saiyan warrior could be delighted by real resistance. "There it is," he said, spitting to the side. "There's the fire the scouter promised. Almost respectable." "Almost," present Goku agreed, and drove a knee into his brother's ribs hard enough to fold him briefly around the impact. On the shoreline, the rest of the group watched in stunned silence, the ordinary rhythm of waves against sand entirely swallowed by the shock waves of each exchange. Krillin's hands were balled into fists at his sides, every instinct screaming at him to jump in and help. It was Piccolo's arm, thrown out in front of him without a word, that held him back. "Not yet," Piccolo said, eyes never leaving the fight. "He needs this." "He's getting creamed out there periodically, Piccolo." "He's matching him," Piccolo corrected, low and intent. "Watch his footwork. He's not losing this fight. He's finding out exactly how strong he actually is, in real time, against something that isn't holding back. That matters more than you think." Future Goku, standing a few feet apart from the group with his arms crossed and his jaw tight, said nothing at all, but his eyes tracked every single exchange with the ferocious, aching intensity of a man watching a memory rewrite itself in front of him, one blow at a time. The fight ground on across the sand, churning it into deep gouges, the two combatants trading position and advantage back and forth in a display that made Raditz's initial contempt curdle steadily into something more careful. He was not losing, not yet, not close. But the margin he'd expected, the crushing, effortless superiority he'd walked off his ship anticipating, had simply failed to materialize. Every strike present Goku landed carried real weight behind it. Every dodge came a fraction faster than the last, the fight itself sharpening him even as it wore him down. It was a mistimed block, 10 minutes in, that changed everything. Present Goku catching a strike meant for his ribs instead across his forearm, the bone giving with an audible, sickening crack that dropped him hard onto one knee, breath torn out of him in a ragged gasp of pain. Raditz was on him in an instant, boot planted hard against his chest, pinning him to the sand, Scouter blinking triumphant readings as he leaned down with cold satisfaction written across his face. "There we are," he said. "Fire's nice. Doesn't win fights on its own." His tail lashed behind him. "Last chance, little brother. Join me, or I finish this the easy way." "Get off him!" Future Goku's voice cut across the beach like a blade, and the temperature of the air itself seemed to change with it. The low, contained hum of ki he'd carried since arrival finally breaking its careful containment, flooding outward in a wave that staggered everyone standing near enough to feel it directly. Raditz's head snapped up, Scouter shrieking a protest of numbers it hadn't been built to comprehend, and for the first time since landing on this planet, something that looked genuinely, unmistakably like fear crossed the Saiyan's face. "That's not," Raditz started. "I told you," Future Goku said, walking forward across the sand with slow, deliberate steps, each one seeming to press the ground itself slightly lower beneath his weight. "My son fights his fight first. You didn't listen. That's on you now. He didn't run. He didn't need to. He crossed the remaining distance at a pace that felt almost gentle, almost unhurried, and the sheer wrongness of that calm, set against the storm visibly building beneath his skin, was somehow more frightening than any burst of speed could have been. Raditz released his boot from present Goku's chest and turned to face this new threat fully, tail coiling low, every combat instinct screaming that this was the moment to either commit fully or retreat, and Saiyan pride would never permit the second option. "You want to know what I am?" Future Goku said quietly, stopping a few feet away, hands loose and open at his sides. "Fine, I'll show you, but I want you to understand something first, because I think you've earned the honesty, even now." His eyes were steady, almost sad. "Where I come from, this exact moment already happened once. It went differently. People I love got hurt in ways I'm not going to describe to you, because you don't deserve the weight of it. I came back, not on purpose, not by choice, but I am here, and I decided somewhere in the last hour that I wasn't going to stand by and let that same morning happen twice. Not to my son, not to my brother." Something flickered across Raditz's face at that last word, brief, complicated, quickly buried beneath Saiyan bravado. "Sentiment," he spat. "Weak." "Maybe," Future Goku said, "or maybe it's the only thing that's ever actually mattered." He rolled his shoulders, settling into a stance that made every fighter watching from the shoreline go instinctively still, Piccolo included, whose eyes had narrowed to sharp, calculating slits, cataloging every detail of a form he did not recognize but instantly understood was operating on an entirely different scale than anything he'd witnessed before. "Last chance. Leave this planet. Don't come back. I promise you, whatever's waiting for you on your ship is a kinder fate than what happens if you make me finish this." Raditz's tail lashed once, twice, pride and self-preservation warring visibly across his features, and then, with a snarl, he lunged. It ended in under 4 seconds. Future Goku moved with a speed that none of the assembled fighters could fully track, Piccolo's trained eyes catching only fragmented afterimages, Krillin not catching anything at all beyond a blur and a sound like the air itself being struck. And when the dust and displaced sand settled, Raditz lay several yards distant, driven hard into the churned earth, breathing but broken, Scouter shattered and sparking uselessly against the side of his skull. Future Goku stood over him without triumph, without cruelty, only a heavy, complicated exhaustion settling back across his features now that the moment had passed. "Go home," he said quietly. "Tell whoever sent you that this planet isn't the easy purge your reports promised. Tell them there's something here now that wasn't here before." He crouched slightly, meeting the dazed Saiyan's eyes directly. "And tell them, if you want to give yourself a reason to keep breathing when you get there, that I said this: whatever comes next, Vegeta, Nappa, whoever else is waiting out there in the dark, I'll be ready for all of it. This planet has a second protector now. That math doesn't change back." Raditz, bloodied and stunned and utterly unable to process the scale of what had just happened to him, said nothing at all, simply stared upward, chest heaving, as the full, terrible weight of a miscalculation settled over him. Present Goku, forearm cradled against his chest but on his feet again, staggered over to stand beside his older self, staring down at his brother's broken form with an expression caught somewhere between vindication and something more complicated. Pity, maybe, or the strange grief of meeting family for the first time in the wreckage of a fight to the death. "You could have killed him," he said quietly. "You didn't." "No," Future Goku agreed. "I didn't." "Why?" Future Goku was quiet for a long moment, watching Raditz's ragged breathing, watching the tail twitch weakly against the sand. "Because in my timeline," he said finally, "I made a different choice, in a moment a lot like this one. It cost more than I was ready to pay. I don't know if letting him live changes anything that matters, but I know I'd rather try to bend this story toward something less bloody than the one I already lived through. If there's any chance at all, it's possible." He looked over at his younger self, something tender and aching in his gaze. "You're going to have to make choices like that yourself before long. Harder ones than this. I can't make them for you. I just wanted you to see, once, that there's always a version of strength that isn't about how far you're willing to go. Sometimes it's about how far you're willing not to go, even when you'd be justified." Behind them, Piccolo approached slowly across the ruined sand, eyes moving between the beaten Saiyan, the exhausted younger fighter, and the impossible, world-altering figure who had just ended what should have been Earth's most dangerous confrontation in under 4 seconds. "That," Piccolo said, low and measured, "was not a power level I have a name for." "You'll have one eventually," Future Goku said, managing something close to a tired smile. "Give it time." Above them, unnoticed by anyone on the beach, the sky remained perfectly ordinary, perfectly blue. No rift, no rupture, no sign that anything about this quiet coastal morning had ever been anything other than history playing out exactly as it should. But 300 miles above, on a white stone platform floating past the clouds, Kami lowered his staff slowly, an old and complicated relief settling into his ancient features, and murmured a single quiet sentence to the genie standing patiently beside him. "The first storm has passed," the guardian said. "But Popo, I do not believe for one moment that it was the only one coming." Far beyond Earth's atmosphere, in the cold dark between stars, a damaged scouter's last transmitted data packet finished its long, silent journey toward a ship still weeks away, carrying, embedded in its garbled, half-corrupted readings, 2 numbers that would soon reach the ears of a prince whose pride had never once, in his entire violent life, tolerated the existence of something he could not explain. The weeks that followed Raditz's defeat did not unfold the way anyone standing on that beach had expected. There was no death, no Snake Way, no King Kai, no year split between a boy training under an unfamiliar teacher and his father learning humility in the afterlife. Instead, there were two Sons of Bardock training side by side in the shadow of Kami's lookout, and a world quietly, urgently preparing itself for a threat that everyone now understood with total clarity was still coming. Future Goku did not train the way present Goku had expected. No gentle sparring, no patient correction. He trained the way a man trains when he has already seen exactly how badly things can go wrong. Piccolo joined them within days, some careful, wary alliance hardening between the Namekian and the elder Goku into something that, if not quite friendship yet, was at least deep mutual respect. Krillin, Tien, Yamcha, Chiaotzu, all of them pushed themselves harder than they ever had, driven by the simple, terrifying knowledge that whatever Raditz reported back would bring something worse. Gohan trained too, small fists and smaller frames straining against forms his father, both of them drilled into him with unusual gentleness, because future Goku, more than anyone alive, understood exactly what this particular 4-year-old was capable of becoming, and exactly how much that capability was going to cost him if it wasn't nurtured carefully. "He's stronger than either of us realizes yet," future Goku told his younger self one evening, watching Gohan spar clumsily against Piccolo's patient guidance. "Stronger than I was at his age. Stronger, maybe, than either of us are right now, if it's ever pulled out of him the wrong way." "That's not comforting," present Goku admitted. "It's not supposed to be comforting. It's supposed to be true." Future Goku's eyes stayed on his son, their son, with something fierce and protective burning quietly behind them. "I want him to grow into that at his own pace. Not because a crisis forced it out of him too early. That's one thing I'm not willing to let happen twice." It was on a quiet morning 3 weeks later, the sky over Kame House pale and cloudless, that the second signal arrived. 2 Saiyan pods, screaming down through the atmosphere on a trajectory that left no ambiguity about their purpose. Vegeta and Nappa, summoned by a garbled, half-corrupted transmission and a wounded pride that had never once tolerated an unexplained variable, had come to see for themselves. The Z-Fighters gathered to meet them on open ground east of the mountains. Piccolo, present Goku, Krillin, Tien, Yamcha, Chiaotzu, all of them steadier and stronger than the version of this exact morning that had played out in another timeline. And standing quietly at the center of them, arms loose at his sides, was a warrior wearing a torn and battle-worn orange gi, watching 2 new pods carve smoking trenches into the earth with the calm, settled patience of a man who had made peace with facing this exact moment for a second time, and intended, this time, to make sure it ended differently. Vegeta climbed out of his pod first, dusting off his armor with contemptuous precision, Scouter already scanning the assembled group, and stopping, for one long, disbelieving moment, on a reading it could not reconcile. 2, he said slowly, staring across the field at the twin, unmistakable signatures standing shoulder to shoulder among Earth's defenders. "There are 2 of them." Beside him, Nappa's grin faltered for the first time in longer than either of them could remember. Future Goku stepped forward, meeting the prince's stare without flinching, and allowed himself, for just a moment, something that looked almost like anticipation. "Welcome to Earth," he said. "I promise you, it's not going to go the way your reports suggested. Whatever came next, and something would, inevitably, terribly come next. The shape of it had already changed the moment a torn and scarred warrior fell out of a sky that didn't belong to him and knelt in a crater beside a boy who hadn't yet become everything he was destined to be. Earth did not know, that quiet morning, whether it had been given a gift or handed a debt it would spend years repaying. It only knew that for the first time in a long time, standing against the dark, it had two of its greatest protector instead of one, a father and a future, side by side, daring the universe to test them both. The battle for Earth's survival was no longer a story with only one ending, and somewhere above the clouds, on a platform of white stone, an old guardian watched the horizon and allowed himself, cautiously, to hope.